Welcome in. It's From the Bleachers, the podcast. Brought to you by the Fan Sports Network.
This is all about baseball's unluckiest team. I'm talking about the Tampa Bay Rays.
Are they the unluckiest, or is it the A's that are the unluckiest?
No, the A's are poorly managed. There's a difference.
Okay.
Listen, if you get shot in the foot, that's unlucky. Mm-hmm. If you shoot yourself in the foot, you're stupid.
That's the A's. The A's are stupid.
A's shoot themselves in the foot.
Yeah, true.
The A's, or the Rays, the A's and the Rays, that can get real confusing real quick. The Rays kind of got shot in the foot. Mm-hmm. The A's shot themselves in the foot.
There we go.
The reason I say the Rays are the unluckiest team is we got to go back to the end of last year. I believe it was in November when the hurricane came through and absolutely destroyed their stadium. Mm-hmm. Okay. The roof of the stadium completely gone, plus thousands of dollars in other damage to the stadium that needs to be fixed. And this is a team that throughout the course of the last year or two, they've really been pushing towards, let's get a new stadium. Do we want to? I
think it was just last season that they released plans, or maybe 2 seasons ago that they released plans for a whole new stadium.
Yeah, they put out some mock-ups of like, this is what we think it could look like, and they were going to put it on the other side of the bay, if I remember, from where they're currently at in what is it called? St. Petersburg.
St. Petersburg, yeah.
They at one point kind of talked about, do we move us kind of more in between Tampa and Orlando to try to give both markets a little bit more of that piece of the pie? But they're like, no, we like being closer to the Bay, so let's just stay in the Tampa Bay area. And
at that point, if you were going to do that, you might as well just do the Florida Rays.
Sure.
Or something like that. Just kind of represent more than just one city.
Than just Tampa Bay, more than just Orlando or whatever. And so, obviously, these plans for the new stadium come about, and they get some of the funding for it and things like that. It starts to look like, okay, new stadium's on the way. This is great. Well, of course, the hurricane hits, and now the team has to call an audible here. First up, they, of course, are like, all right, well, we just got to figure out what we're doing for this next season. They are, for those of you who don't know, they're going to be playing in the New York Yankees spring training facility. So that's one good thing about being in Florida, I guess, is there are tons of spring training facilities.
Yeah.
They are kind of spread out all over South Florida and mid-Florida, you could say, throughout that area. And so they're going to play where the Yankees spring training facility is, which is actually closer to Orlando than it is Tampa, kind of in the area where they were talking about maybe building a stadium in the first place. Well, it was recently released this last week that the proposal for the new stadium is now shot. Yep. That cannot happen because they can't afford to rebuild Tropicana and build a new stadium.
Yeah.
That just
and they have to get Tropicana rebuilt because
they can't play in the Yankees.
Yeah, this minor league thing is like a year rental type.
It is
thing.
A year. It is a 1 year rental. Yeah, they are, and that's the other thing. The New York Yankees general manager or whoever it was basically said, like, we're not expecting them to stay here longer than a year. Like we said, you're good for this year. Like there's no talk outside of the 1 year. So anyway, all the money that they allocated towards the new stadium is now going to go towards fixing up Tropicana. Here's the other problem. Tropicana is like the 6th oldest MLB stadium right now, which feels weird because it was only built in the 90s. Yeah. It was built in like 1991 or something like that, which to me doesn't seem that old. But to be fair, that was about 35 years ago. Most stadiums are newer than that by a lot, right?
Yeah.
You get a few classics in there, obviously your Wrigley, your Fenways, and then you got your Dodger Stadium. Angel Stadium's pretty old. But as far as baseball is concerned, most teams are building new stadiums about every 30 years. Like that's just kind of been the way that everyone's been going about, is almost every 30 years, a team's been getting new stadiums, or at least considering it. Even the Diamondbacks, who have only existed about 30 years, are already...
Since 1998, yeah.
Yeah, they're already considering a new stadium, so you're getting a lot of teams that they only last about 30 years in a stadium.
And rightfully so for the D-backs, because Chase Field is it's consistently down towards the bottom whenever I see stadium rankings.
Yeah, well, and Tropicana is
always at the
bottom 2.
Them and the Oakland Coliseum when it was
Which now that's gone.
Yeah, when it was still around. They were always battling it out for last place.
Yeah. So with all of this, now again, New stadium, out of the picture, that's not going to happen. Staying where they're at in the Yankees spring training facility, that can't stick around. So Tropicana's back to being their home. But again, that's not a long-term solution. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, there are very few options for what Tampa Bay can do right now with the Rays. I know from again, articles and whatnot that commissioner doesn't want them to hold on to the team much longer. Like they're pressuring them to sell the team. If that were to happen, obviously, depending on who they sell to, there's a few options here. If they sell, because that's a big if, number one, they could be moving somewhere. Mm-hmm. If they sell to someone in the Florida area,
and that's my least favorite possibility, by the way.
Yeah,
and I know the Rays aren't some huge popular franchise. In fact, they're probably one of the more irrelevant franchises in sports. But I know with every team, with the Coyotes, with the A's, with anyone, whenever a team is moving, there's that fan base that I just feel for. Like, it really sucks. I couldn't imagine the Vikings or Twins or any of those guys moving from Minnesota and me still wanting to even be a fan at all.
I understand that.
So that's mostly, and I do like the Rays and Tampa and all that stuff. So I don't love the idea of them
moving. I like the brand. I do like that. Well, and so one thought is, number one, they sell and they don't move at all. They just, whoever they sell to puts some money forward and they can get a new stadium. They stay in the Tampa area and they live on. Mm-hmm. Option number two is, there is a group out of Orlando that's really fighting for a team. And if they were to be the ones to buy it and move the team to Orlando, at least they're not moving far. Honestly, they would probably just be the Orlando Rays. I don't see why you change it because Orlando still fits the Rays.
Yeah, but I feel like they love the Dreamers branding because it's all like Disney and all that stuff.
Yeah.
That's the name that they've been going for and the branding that they've been going for. And that would fit a lot more with the Disney aspect and with the Orlando Magic.
It's fit more with an expansion team.
Yeah, but I mean, if they can't get an expansion team, next best thing is just relocating a team.
And relocating the A's to Orlando is probably the most likely thing to come out of this whole scenario at this moment. That's what I would say. Mm-hmm. It's more than likely going to happen. Mm-hmm. The next option would be that they sell them to someone other than any of these guys that would probably end up taking them out of Florida altogether, which, as you mentioned, not great for the fans, but let's be honest, the Rays are consistently at the bottom outside of the A's in the last few years in Oakland. I will say that. The Rays are always last or second to last in attendance. And that's even when the Rays are really good. Mm-hmm. The A's, I understand people not showing up for them in some way, okay? When a team's really bad, it is hard to go root for them. Mm-hmm. Now, I say that as a Utah fan where we still sell out Jazz games and they're horrible. Mm-hmm. You know, like we live in an area where
the A's fans don't want to go and support an owner like John Fisher.
And that's another part of it.
That's the main part of it, you know. The owner wanting to move and then him never spending money until this season after they finally move. But all of it just a frustrating situation.
But I don't understand why fans don't support the Rays, though, because I don't think the ownership is actually all that bad. They consistently are building good competitive teams.
Here's the thing. If you really think about it, ownership for every MLB team, at least ones not like the Mets or Yankees or anything, all of them love pulling the whole, we're so poor card. Guys, we're small market. We can't spend. We all know everyone, like all the owners are millionaires, billionaires. They have plenty of money to spend.
They could spend more.
They don't love it. To an extent,
yeah.
So, and yeah, the Rays are consistently, except for this past year, which was a down year, they're consistently fighting for a playoff spot. They're just a really scrappy overall team. They were in the World Series just like 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So the Rays are consistently there, at least. And I remember 2 years ago, 2023, their wild card series against the Texas Rangers. They were 99-63. They started that season 13-0, all of that stuff. The stadium in Tampa, and to be fair, the game was happening at like 1, 2, or 3 in the afternoon in Tampa. So
on like a Wednesday,
or something, or Tuesday or Wednesday or something like that. And the place was deserted. I mean,
for a playoff game.
Yeah, the top seats were not filled at all. The bottom seats had a decent amount of people, but still were empty a little bit. But the thing about the Tampa through all of this is that St. Petersburg and Tropicana Field, I've learned, was literally 45 minutes outside of Tampa.
But also remember this: Tampa as an area is heavy in people who have like second homes or that is like
or
their
people
retirement homes.
Exactly.
And so it's people who honestly, they probably do have the time of the day to go to a game, but baseball is built for families.
But yeah,
I don't see a lot of retired people. And now I'm not saying all, because there are a lot of retired people who love to go out to a baseball game, but the majority of people going to baseball games are younger people. Not always. I'm not saying you can't, but I'm just saying if you go to a game, just take a look. It's a lot of people who are in their 40s and 50s with their kids or whatever that are at these games. And then, of course, you still have, your 20s and 30-year-olds as well, kind of sprinkling in the crowd. And then the younger or the older group as well into your 60s, 70s, 80s and beyond. But Tampa is an area that is very prominent with older people.
And like you said, retired people who go to Florida as a retirement. And a lot of them aren't Rays fans or anything when they go to Florida. They're Yankees fans. They're Dodgers fans. I don't know why you'd go from LA to Florida.
Yeah,
it's like
they're probably more going to be
Yankees
like
fans. They're
Boston
Phillies fans. They're Mets fans. They're whatever. They're Red Sox fans. They're Boston fans. Yeah. So a lot of the retired people there probably aren't even Rays fans to begin with.
Yeah, they probably just don't even care about Major League Baseball at all in some aspects, at least in Tampa area. So my point with all of this is, of course, Salt Lake City, Utah is on that short list. And to give you the list real quick, let's run it down. Orlando's on that list. Charlotte's on that list.
Charlotte's one that I
Nashville, Salt Lake, and Portland. Okay, those 5 cities. You can throw in Montreal. Kind of.
Montreal, I feel like, is always going to be up there just because they had a team.
Yeah, but
for
because
such a
they
long time.
lost one, I feel like
you don't want to go back there.
The league's going to be apprehensive to give them a team when they already lost a team. It's the reason why I feel like Seattle hasn't gotten an NBA team back. But that's
Atlanta
hasn't gotten conversation.
Atlanta hasn't gotten an NHL. They've lost it twice. Yeah. There's no way they get one back.
Atlanta's not getting an NHL team.
There's no way.
Sorry, Thrasher fans. It's not happening.
Yeah. Go continue to root for the Winnipeg Jets.
There you go. So I just don't see a world in where at least the Rays stick with the current ownership, because I do think they need some new money and new blood to come in and make some big decisions in the very near future.
Yeah.
And so I expect to see the Rays selling here in the next year or two. The future beyond that could be so many possibilities.
Could be in Orlando. Could be the Dreamers.
They could be coming here to Utah.
Could be Charlotte. Could be Salt Lake City. Yeah. But while we're on the subject of expansion teams, I want to say I've always been pulling for Salt Lake City, of course, to get a team, and then Orlando to also get a team. I would prefer Orlando gets an expansion team of their own and not a different team, just because I want everyone to have someone to root for, all that good stuff. Sure. I want a happy ending for the Tampa Bay Rays, so I want Orlando to get their own team. And then I also love the idea of Charlotte getting their team. I've always thought Charlotte would be a good baseball
city. And I lean more towards Nashville.
Nashville, yeah.
I lean more towards Nashville than
those are my big
Charlotte. Charlotte, honestly, I would be okay if Charlotte took the Rays in some way, but I would rather the Rays either be in Orlando or Tampa.
Yeah. Keep them in Florida.
Only if fans can come out, and I just don't believe that they can right now. That's the only other thing. I don't know if the Rays will stay in Tampa because the fans just have not proven themselves. And that's a big reason why, honestly, why Fisher's wanting to move the A's, because no one's showing up to games in Oakland anymore. Now, if he would stop being cheap and actually build a winning team, maybe people would show up.
Exactly.
But again, I think you need to go somewhere where it's not just fair weather fans. I think you need to go somewhere where it's a good sports community and people just show up.
Florida is such a fair weather just state in general. Even down in Miami, Miami's a bit more successful because their teams are actually successful.
The Marlins aren't getting a lot of people out.
Marlins don't get a lot of people. Even if you watch a Miami Heat game, the Miami Heat crowd is notorious for being empty and like leaving early or being late
showing
or all
up
sorts
late,
of different
leaving
things.
early. I know you go to tip off and man, Heat culture, whatever it is.
The Heat crowd is just not there
20
sometimes.
minutes late. And what's stupid is basketball games already start like 15 minutes after they're supposed to.
Yeah.
And you still can't get there on time?
Yeah.
Come on.
So, even down in Miami and then Jacksonville, the Jaguars don't pull great attendance because they kind of suck. But, Florida is just such a fair weather state. But it has a lot of like market because it's gigantic and it's got so many huge cities in it.
Yeah.
So that's why it has so many teams. But yeah, in Tampa, especially with so many retired people there, they may not care about the Rays. They may not care about baseball at all. Just a tough place to get a crowd in. I'm hoping that they can find some way to get a new stadium built there closer to Tampa, not in St. Petersburg, and they can actually see if that makes a difference. Because I wish they were playing in a stadium closer to Tampa or even inside of Tampa to see if people would actually show up and if they have a crowd and fans in Tampa to determine if they want to put a new stadium there. Because I know St. Petersburg is pretty far out.
Yeah.
You said the minor league stadium they're playing in is like halfway or something, like closer to Orlando than it is Tampa.
Yeah, so the stadium that they're going to be playing in is definitely more towards Orlando. Like, I think it's closer to Orlando than it is Tampa. So where they're at right now, where Tropicana Field is right now, is there's like a little peninsula that goes out across the bay. So they're not in Tampa itself, which that's why it's called Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay is just an area.
It's a bay, yeah.
Yeah.
City's Tampa, and then the bay next to it.
So the thing is, they are in essentially downtown St. Petersburg. So their plan would be to kind of stay in St. Petersburg. And I'll put it over here so you can see it on my screen here.
Yeah.
Nate. But yeah, so their plan would be to kind of stay in the St. Petersburg area, I believe. But is that really the best place for them?
No, it's not.
Maybe
it's not at all.
Maybe what they need to do is move up into the Tampa area.
Yeah, go across the bay and go into Tampa.
Yeah, because right now, again, they're kind of on this weird peninsula where trying to get here, I'm sorry, but you're crossing how many bridges? And it's just like, I can only imagine that traffic is not great to get to downtown St. Petersburg for a game.
No way.
In so many,
that's one thing I've heard from like the two Rays fans out there is that it's tough to get there.
It's a tough spot. I will admit though, there's a lot more stadiums being built in suburbs. Mm-hmm. Look at Truist Park in Atlanta. It is not in downtown Atlanta. It's in a suburb.
No. Yeah.
And I understand, for a while there, through the early 2000s, most of those stadiums through the early 2000s are built downtown in these cities. Mm-hmm. Look at PNC Park in Pittsburgh. It's downtown Pittsburgh. Look at the Washington Nationals Park. It's downtown DC. So there are a lot of these ones that are being built downtown. But if you look at the most recent ones in the last 5 to 10 years, they're starting to move away from downtown and building full-on communities around the stadium. So it's more of an experience even around the ballpark where you can go to sports bars before the game and after the game, where you can go hit up an arcade with the kids before the game starts and doors open. And that's just not happening in Tampa Bay.
No.
So if they were to move it, say, out to the outskirts of Tampa, where it's a little easier to get to from Orlando, you can just hop on the freeway and get down from Orlando.
Is that Orlando right up there?
Yeah, that's Orlando on the map.
I didn't know they were so close. I thought...
That's what I'm saying. They're very close.
Okay, Orlando is where I thought it was. I just didn't think Tampa was so big.
Yeah, Tampa's pretty spread out. But again, it's just not necessarily a sports town when it comes to baseball.
Well,
they care about their football.
Thing is,
football's fine.
It's just so weird. Tampa is like an underrated sports city. Like, it really is. The Buccaneers, a 2-time Super Bowl champion. They've made the playoffs like 5 or 6 years in a row. The Lightning are a consistent Stanley Cup contender. They go to the playoffs. They have like 3 Stanley Cup wins. And then you have the Rays, who haven't won a World Series, but they've been to the playoffs, especially since they became just the Tampa Bay Rays back in 2008. They've been to the World Series twice. They're a consistent playoff contender. It's just weird because Tampa, if you look at like their accolades and stuff, they are a successful sports cities, a lot more successful than most. Yeah. And they still struggle to draw crowds, especially for baseball games. It's really unfortunate.
It is unfortunate. It's sad. I don't know. Whatever it is that they're going to do, they just got to get it figured out sooner than later. And I think the league's going to force them into figuring it out. So anyway,
I
we'll
hope,
see what they do.
I hope they don't move. Just going to say that. I hope they don't move out of Tampa. But please give Orlando an expansion team. I want to see Orlando have more than just the Magic.
Well, if I will say again, I think that's almost too close for one not performing well in Tampa. I think Tampa and Orlando are too close to have 2 baseball teams. If you ask me, I think they are too close. So it's more or less pick a city and put a team in that city.
Yeah.
But Salt Lake needs one.
Salt Lake needs one.
Salt Lake would do well. After going to Jazz games, and now I went to a Utah Hockey Club game this week, just on Saturday I was there. Utah supports their teams. And I think Utah getting a baseball team, it would be packed every single game. Good, bad, rain, shine, they're there. Yeah. That's the way I would see it. So.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Okay, wait, real quick, before we get to break here, since we're on the subject of a Utah baseball team, do you build a dome stadium, or do you have it be out about? Because, I mean,
I'm torn.
Come September, October, it can be way cold up there.
Yeah, so that's
and stuff like that.
This is
and
why,
even April and March.
This is why I'm torn. I think an open air stadium in Salt Lake actually would work just fine. I really do. It would be the playoffs where it would get really, really cold and not be all that enjoyable. Yeah. I mean, that's when it would be really rough.
But then you have places like New York and Philly that play
like those guys play outdoors. Minneapolis has an outdoor stadium. You've got
Utah just
Boston,
needs to prove that they can handle the cold in baseball.
I think honestly an outdoor stadium would work out fine. Yeah, I don't know. I would rather an outdoor stadium. Okay. I know some people disagree with that and are like, well, what about the snow? Like, yeah, but I think most of baseball season is done without snow. Plus,
maybe make it retractable, but I feel like that costs a lot more. But I mean, that might be the best solution.
Yeah, but even in today's day and age, I do think that they could put in systems, kind of like what the Bills are doing with their stadium. The new Highmark Stadium is going to be an outdoor stadium, but with so many bells and whistles to help melt snow and make it for a better fan experience, even when it is cold outside. I know that BYU's baseball field has a coiled system under the field to melt snow on the field so they can still play. Even if it's snowing outside, the field can be 60 degrees.
Yeah.
And the snow will be melted. There are ways around it, if you ask me. So they just have to figure out what those ways are. And I would love to see it. I'd love to see Salt Lake get a team.
Yeah. Bring it here, MLB. We're ready.
We're ready.
We are ready.
This has been From the Bleachers. Thank you for listening in. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast wherever it is that you're listening. Or, of course, you can follow along on all of our social media platforms as well. Just follow the Fan Sports Network. And until next time, everybody, again, thank you for listening to From the Bleachers.